Hello and welcome on in. This is the maybe second or third year that we've been doing this, but a fun evening, a fun time. Not only because this means that we have just released another book, but it also means we get to kind of hang out, relax, and talk a little bit about it, and then interact with you all on YouTube. So my name's Ryan Bloomfield. I'll be the host tonight and introduce Chris Blessing and Brent Hershey, who play pivotal roles in this year's release. Brent, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Good to be here. Fun to have these books beyond us, but it's always fun to get the extra hard copy in the mail. And mine came last week, so I'm excited to see that it came out like it was supposed to for the most part, and excited to talk about it tonight.
Absolutely. We were chatting before. I'm still waiting for mine. I was one of the first ones to get the baseball forecaster, so I'm just repaying that debt, I guess, with the minor league version. So yeah, Brent's the editor on this thing, and it's a huge undertaking. So definitely glad that it's over for your sake, Brent, especially the second book of book season. The forecaster being the first. And then we've also got Chris Blessing, who has put together, I think you've got the highest number of orgs in the MLB. I think you're up to 12. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, I have 12 different orgs. I also contributed most of the articles, with the exception of Brent's long introduction, which was phenomenal this year. And just promote a little bit of our stuff. You can find us at Baseball HQ, the Eyes Have It series. And then also Brent and I started a podcast since the last time, since 2021's minor league baseball analyst. So that's also called the Eyes Have It podcast. And we're going to be bringing it back in March of this year. And our main thing with that is that we go to the ballparks and we talk about the players that we see at the ballparks. Sometimes it's on video, but our listeners don't give us too much crap for that, right?
Right.
It's a good one. It was my go-to, especially the angle that you guys have of seeing folks at the park is especially good. So looking forward to that tonight. However, we've got a fun agenda for you. We're basically gonna have Brent and Chris walk through, kind of a little bit peek behind the curtain on some of the key concepts in the book and some of those essays that Chris alluded to. We'll do some player box walkthrough. So kind of the meat and potatoes of the minor league baseball analyst is the player boxes and the write-ups for every prospect. I believe roughly about 1,000, which is, it is a lot. And then we'll talk through some lists, some HQ 100 reactions, get Chris and Brent's thought on that, and then open up Q&A. So you're all watching this on YouTube, and invite you to leave questions, comments really throughout the show. But we will bookend some time at the end of this to talk about any questions on players or scouting or whatever you guys want to talk about. We'll have some time at the end there. So before we kick off, just a couple quick housekeeping things. If you have not purchased your MLBA at this point, it's available through BaseballHQ.com. If you click there, and there's a little sidebar on the right side with a forecaster and the minor league baseball analyst. Purchasing through us gets you access to the electronic files as well, which is super useful when you're trying to look things up and crunch data and that sort of thing. So also, please, if you guys don't mind, like and subscribe this video, subscribe to our channel. We're doing a lot more video stuff this draft season, so don't miss out on that. With that, we're going to dive right in. And Brent, I think you're first up. Let's see. I've got an old version of it here.
Uh-oh. We're already doomed, everybody.
That's right. Let's see. All right, here we go.
There we go.
A much more polished. When I said peek behind the curtain, I literally meant that.
You didn't know, exactly what that meant, did you?
Yeah.
So in this year's introduction, obviously, I wanted to talk a little bit about the effect of COVID-19. It affected us certainly, as if you aren't aware, we've done this book this is the 17th edition. And last year, in the 2021 edition, with no minor league season in 2020 to kind of fuel our reports and skills grades and all that goodness that's in there, we decided to take it and just do digital only. So we worked around that, did some updates from what we could find from some of the players that were assigned to the alternate site. But as we approach this book this year with a full minor league season behind us in 2021, I did want to just kind of reflect on kind of what we could learn or think about, or what we need to keep in mind as you go through the book with this lost season of 2020 being, of course, that time when COVID was rampant and the whole minor league baseball season was canceled. So I looked at it a little bit, and I think the effects of that are certainly going to be far-reaching, and we won't know how exactly just it will affect everything until much later, really, or if forever. But in the intro, I tried to think about a subset of players who might be the most affected by this. Again, just sort of as a backdrop to taking some of the stuff from the book, and identified kind of two main groups. One was the class of players, both international and through the draft, that came in to organizations in the year before, in 2019. The draft every year is in the summer, June. Now it's in July. The international calendar at that point had always been, the start of it had always been July 15th. So in 2019, a whole group of both draftees and international signings came into the major league organizations. And how that's important is that in 2020, when that comes around, that's kind of the first full year that these prospects would be with these organizations, whether they're, 16-year-old kids from the Dominican or Latin America, or whether they're college seniors. This 2020 would have been their first kind of full year as a professional baseball player. And so to have that kind of taken from them, many of them certainly got time at their complexes in Latin America with the major league teams, or in short season ball in 2019. But again, not having the full effect of a full year in this routine. I just think is an important thing to keep in mind, so that 2021, as we just completed, it was kind of that first year to sort of get acclimated, like anyone in a new experience. It takes a while to get used to that. So that was one class of players I looked at. The second one was a little bit more, was interesting. I was thinking, because I thought, especially on the hitting side of things, repetitions are so important. And a lot of, especially some of the younger players that we cover in this each year have what we would call a raw skill set, where just needing the in-game repetitions of pitching, but also, as I looked at specifically, on the hitting side. So this wasn't a scientific kind of way I went about it, but I went back through the 2020 minor league baseball Analyst and looked for the capsules in the player boxes that had anything to do with kind of like a raw skill set. Anytime it needed, this player needs some reps to develop, or his hit tool is kind of less defined, I kind of noted those, and then pulled them out and compared them to what our reports at that point were already written for this 2022 book. And so I then grouped them kind of into 4 buckets, because there were some players that were in the 2019 version that weren't in, or the 2020 version that weren't in 2022. And then there are ones that kind of who graded worse in 2022 than they did in 2020, kind of back, stepped a little bit. There were some that graded about the same, and then some actually that graded better in there. And so I just thought it was an interesting way to kind of look across the years, kind of across this gulf of that missing 2020 season, to just give us some perspective on, again, for us as fantasy players, how we go about making keeper decisions if they're already on our roster, or how we go about making decisions this draft season for prospects like that. Just that context of having here's some hitters, or kind of, we identified at one point that really needed those repetitions. That opportunity was taken away from them. They have that now a full season beyond that, and how they reacted to that. So it was just an interesting way to kind of look at things, I think, as we approach the 2022 season. Chris, I'm curious. I know, you spend a lot of time at the ballpark. What did you see during the 2021 season, at the parks and stuff, that made kind of prospect evaluation especially difficult in light of like this lost season?
I actually enjoyed going to the ballpark, not necessarily for the first time in a long time. I don't want to kind of say that because it's kind of what I do all the time, but I really enjoyed seeing guys kind of with a blank canvas. There was a lot of blank canvases last year.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal in a lot of cases. We got to a guy that I didn't get to see, Anthony Volpe, whatever his name is, was a huge star last season. Is now hasn't necessarily creeped in our top 10 yet, but has creeped in other people's top 10s. I was very, very starting pitching really lacked. Pitching in general really lacked throughout the minor leagues last year. Specifically, like by the end of the year, you were seeing a lot of bad pitching performances, especially in the high A, low A range. I got to go to Florida. And I've been around low A. I've been around all of these leagues my whole existence in this game, which is what 2009 was when I started, and like it just bottomed out. The pitching just bottomed out, and you saw more injuries. You saw more guys getting signed off of independent league squads. So like the pitching really took more of a hit than maybe the hitters, and you also got to see that in instructional league at the end of the season. Some organizations like the New York Mets only brought their hitters in. They wanted to give all their pitchers a rest. And then there were other cases where you saw teams sometimes use pitching machines, just like we saw in 2021 in instructional leagues as well.
Yeah, I definitely saw that too. There was some, like you said, some kind of late season games in the minor leagues that were quite offensive minded, and talking with some folks around the game, that was certainly something that they were aware of. Again, kind of this lack of arms really hurt them, or they felt that after the missed 2020.
How did you guys work that into your evaluation? Like, I mean, do you kind of have to calibrate if there is a pitcher who's at least treading water? Is that, something noteworthy versus if hitting was so far ahead of pitchers? Do you take I remember just with, like the old Pacific Coast League, take those numbers with a grain of salt because of park factors and things like that. But did you kind of have to dial back some love for the hitters and that sort of thing because they seem so far behind?
There's certain things that go into this, but at the end of the day, we're looking at the player individually, and counting hard contact, doing all that kind of thing. Like right now, you mentioned the old Pacific Coast League. I would actually discount a lot of what I see out of the all the AAAs right now, because they're using like the reject MLB balls there that are completely juiced. And if you see the data difference between AAA and AA right now is just tremendous. It's guys are hitting the ball at a much higher rate. And it's crazy to see guys that have went from AA to AAA and seeing how those averages just jump up. Their 90th percentile exit velocity, their 75th percentile exit velocity. So really and truly, I've always thrown the stats out more so this year than in years past. When I'm evaluating at the ballpark, I'm just evaluating the player, and there's just a lot of bad pitching. Guys got out of shape, that kind of thing, didn't throw regularly. I think another thing, and I know this goes back to the original question, but like you could even tell the organizations that figured out how to use the pandemic to their advantage. I think the Orioles is a perfect example of an organization that used the tools that they had. I've had sources tell me that they had cooking classes, they had reading clubs beyond just their instruction. So like they were keeping their guys engaged together, even though they were in separate locations, and keeping up the coaching. And then you have an organization like the Angels who laid off all of their player development guys. And if you look, the Angels right now have the 29th or 30th, depending on who you want to talk to, farm system in baseball. And I think that has a lot to do with laying off their staff and not having that extra time to, create, to work within the means that teams had.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. I did not know that on I knew the Angels, but didn't realize that on the Orioles side as an org who really took advantage as much as they could of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to kind of what we were talking about before. Is just those types of things will, it's going to be hard to know right now, but it'll be more interesting to think about it in 5-6 years down the road when we have the longer view of it, all the different paths that things went because of that season.
I mean, I could see people right now going like this, I don't need any of these Angel guys and stuff. I'll be honest, if you read our evaluations this year, I mean, they already had tons of position players that had questionable hit tools and that kind of thing. So like, it obviously didn't hurt Reed Detmers. We saw him in the major leagues. We saw him tire. I mean, that's kind of expected, but like he at least was at Louisville for part of 2020. So like, at least he was getting something there. It's really sad. I mean, who knows about their position players with the Angels, whether that would have done any difference, because I mean, most of them have, like I said, have this fatal flaw. It's usually their hit tool that like you just fall in love with all these tools and, they just never hit. And missing that season for an organization with a lot of those type of guys was really detrimental.
Yeah.
One of the crazy things with the Angels, I know their draft, and we'll kind of transition to the draft as part of what we cover in the MLBA, but I believe was it all pitchers, or was it the first like 20, Chris?
It was all pitchers.
It was all pitchers.
It was all pitchers, and I'm
crazy.
Kind of going through that. I was talking to a scout the other day, not with the Angels, by the way, but like you felt more certain about pitchers from a scout sense because like especially with the college hitters did not come in and do much of anything last year. We saw the first overall pick, Henry Davis, just like kind of run things. But like other guys, like a guy that's going to be available this year, Judd Fabian was right there with the top guys, and he fell to the second round and he didn't sign because his hit tools were going away, that kind of thing. So like this draft this year the 2021, I should say, has a higher concentration of pitching by percentage than we've seen. But I would say that it's one of the most quality prep hitting classes because those prep hitters went through all their normal motions. Okay. I know we have people from all across the country. Just here, we have Oregon, we have Pennsylvania, and we have Georgia. Things were wide open here in 2020. We were holding the various showcase events here in the state of Georgia and the state of Alabama. They went on, these high school showcases went on, but these college leagues did not. So leagues like Cape Cod League did not take place. There were some scattering of smaller leagues, but for the most part, so that affected the 2021 class more than really, I believe, anything was not having that thing. And that's why the prep bats really, and the concentration that teams were able to have on those prep bats, because they kept on getting eyes, even if they didn't get to the ballpark. All of those showcases have several video angles, all of the data any team would want. It made scouting those players a lot easier compared to the college hitters.
It's interesting too. I know it's a kind of super simple example that a lot of people talk about, but that kind of the Mike Trout story of why he fell so far in the first round. One of the theories or reasons was the weather was so bad in the spring in New Jersey that year that he barely even got to play. So no one really got to see him leading up to the draft. And that seems like, depending on where you're at in the country and where you were during the pandemic, that's just going to be kind of even more exemplified with the 2021 draft. So yeah, Chris, you went through all of the different team recaps. Were there a few hitters that stuck out to you when you were just going through in terms of first year, for folks listening, for first year player draft and dynasty and that sort of thing? Yeah,
I mean, this was a heavy prep hitter class, but I think the prep hitters. They all have interesting tool sets. I mean, Marcelo Meyer is the big name, and he was taken by the Red Sox, I think, with the 4th overall pick. A shortstop that looks to be a potential all-star caliber fantasy performer at a high premium position like shortstop. His ability to drive the ball, his ability to work counts, his ability to get to hard contact. Our buddy Joe Drake got to see a lot of him in Fort Myers. Check out his YouTube page. There's tons of Meyer highlights there. A guy I really liked was taken in the 16th overall pick, Khalil Watson. He was a guy out of North Carolina, another shortstop. This came from this was the Marlins pick. Your typical toolsy, a lot of the position players with the Marlins, they have a type. They love the tools and stuff. But I like the guy's refinement. I think that the hit tool is much better than a lot of the hit tools of those toolsy guys that we've come to know and love that have come up, including Jazz Chisholm. People were throwing Jazz Chisholm comps on the guy. I never understood that. I think that was just because they had some flair, you know what I mean? I also really liked, to round out some prep guys, I really liked the Cubs' second round pick. He's a guy that I'm going to probably talk about more in depth later, so I'm just going to throw it out there. But James Triantos, he was drafted out of the Virginia area. And I've apparently have talked to every team that was interested in him. And the Cubs, there's a few teams that are very upset that the Cubs took him at that point. He did nothing but hit in Arizona during the Arizona Complex League for the Cubs. And he's going to headline probably one of the best squads in minor leagues next year, which is the Charleston team, which is the Cubs single A affiliate. It's just going to be loaded. Kevin Alcantara, Owen Casey, probably Pete Crow Armstrong, the guy that they acquired from the Mets I almost said Chris Bryant deal. I meant Javier Baez. I don't know. I'm just talking to somebody for a trade.
There were a few deals last
involving
year.
Chris Bryant. Like you know how that is. You go and you talk to somebody, and then you're like, oh, that's the only guy that got traded from the Cubs last year. On the hitting thing, like the college hitter I like the most is, of course, Henry Davis. He's a catcher. He went to the Pirates, 1-1. Beyond that, like Aaron Zavala, who went to the Rangers, I liked him too. Another quality guy there. But the pitchers last year for I thought that there was a lot of like the top guys, Jack Leiter, Jackson Jobe, Kumar Rocker, who didn't sign, like those guys were kind of in one class. And then there was this bunched up group that like it ran all the way from every pitcher that got took after Sam Bachman through maybe Tommy Mace in the end of the second round by the Guardians. Just like a tremendous group of guys that all kind of fit in like an SP3, SP4 range for college starters. Of those guys, and I'm going to just highlight again another Cubs guy, Kansas State pitcher named Jordan Wicks. I always want to call him Jackson, so I had to make sure. I don't know why Jackson stuck in my head, but for whatever reason, I want to do that. So I'm like Jordan Wicks. But Wicks is a guy that like just pops analytically with his the fastball carry and all of those attributes. And I think he has a really good mix. And I think that because he's a softer tosser, I think that he kind of is a undervalued guy. I also like Gavin Williams. I think that there's some potential for the Guardians to unleash with him, a guy that commands his pitches. Maybe not the best athlete in the world, but somebody who, is going to an organization that seems to know how to get the most out of the pitchers. And I'm just going to throw out a name, a 7th rounder named Logan Workman, mostly because I scouted him a lot. He was a Lee University guy. I'm not talking about a guy that, this is a guy that in the deepest things, I would try to put a flyer on him. If you're in a team that's rostering 50, 60 guys and there's 25, 20 teams, I just like him. Good carry on his fastball, slider with command. You don't necessarily get those guys often. And then really the high school guys are just Jackson Jobe, who went to the Tigers, and Andrew Painter, who went to the Phillies. There's other guys too, but those are the two big names that seem to have a fairly good chance of developing.
Cool. And then you looked ahead at this coming year's draft 2022. If you just want to do a quick hit on some of these three guys that stuck out at you, they definitely stuck out at me in the book.
Yeah, I was going to try to get video, and I was going to try to share my screen for this, but it didn't work out. That's what I was doing when Brent was talking. I was like, ooh, maybe I can just go through these scouting reports real quick, but it didn't work out.
First pitch Arizona style.
Yeah, first pitch Arizona style. I've never done that in first pitch Arizona. So, but Elijah Greene's a guy that I saw last year while helping out another team. He's an out of area guy. All of these guys that we have listed here are out of area guys. So they're not guys I'm going to get to see. And if I do get to see them, the people that I talk to aren't really concerned about him. Elijah Greene is the son of former Steelers tight end Eric Greene. And just he's built like a football player. He looks the part. I just saw absolutely majestic power display against a really, really good team, Baylor School, which produced, I think, 5 Division I guys last year. It was 4 Division I guys. And, I think it was sorry, I'm having a conversation with myself. There is some swing and miss in his bat, but looking at the video from the showcase this year, it already looks like he shortened up his bat, bat path, and by doing that should really unlock some big time power, which is already there and is already playing. So to be able to get to that contact's a big deal. I also picked Jace Young to showcase, just because we are most likely going to be dealing a lot with Josh Young in the next couple of years. I'll be honest, Josh Young's a fine player. Jace Young might actually be a better player. Jace, so when Josh was in college, Josh was strictly a right center field hitter, going the other way as a right-handed guy, and had struggles, and something that the Rangers have unlocked, and we'll probably talk about a little later, to hit the ball in the air to the pull side. Now, Jace has those same characteristics where his swing is naturally geared to hit the opposite field gaps. But the difference here is he loads up well on the fastball. So while he might lack some of the defensive skill and is probably going to end up as a second baseman, there's a good chance that Jace might actually outpace and is kind of further along right now at the same age of when they were drafted than his brother, who's with the Rangers now. And then the last one, I picked this guy. This was a guy that was actually in my area. I saw him last year as a sophomore high school player for a small Christian school in the Atlanta area. And they came up here to the small Christian school here in Dalton, Georgia. I figured I had nothing else to do on a Wednesday night. Let's go see Cam Collier. Cam, if you mention, remember the name Collier. I know Brent was probably a big fan of his dad, Lou, who played. Did he star for the Phillies? I don't think he starred for the Phillies. He was a solid utility guy for several years. Cam decided to reclass as a high school guy to the senior class this year. So he bumped himself up a level. And then the competition in his league is not that strong, and that's the reasoning that was given. But Collier has headed down to community college in Florida, to Chippewa Community College, where he is the star attraction in junior college ranks and is a first-round pick. So it'll be interesting to see. The last guy that did this route just like this was Bryce Harper. Now, we're not saying that Cam is anywhere. I mean, I saw Harper when he was drafted, right after he was drafted. And, these two kids aren't comparable. But this kid's somebody who, if he went through the normal path, would have probably been a top 5 pick next year with maturation. So it's very curious how this gamble is going to pay off. But this guy just impacts the ball. And when I saw him, he was against lesser competition, and he was making a concerted effort of going the other way and, essentially placing the ball. And he could flip his wrist at any time to hit the ball out of the ballpark against the lesser competition. I know that he was in a tournament this last weekend in the Panhandle. I heard that the people raved about him. The scouts that were there raved about him. So it will be interesting to see how this path turns out. But I thought he was an interesting guy to bring to this discussion.
Very good. Yeah. So check out all the draft stuff. It's really interesting and good forward looking way for Dynasty. I'm going to pivot a little bit to the pro prospects and Brent, I know at HQ, this goes way back to the days of Derek McMahon and just talk about our rating system.
Yeah, I'll just do it quickly for those that aren't as familiar. We use kind of a 2-part rating system for every prospect in the book, and we use them on the site too. Yep. And it involves 2 parts. The first one is kind of a top end kind of ceiling that we see for the player, and we give those. We have them ranked, as you can see here on the screen, from kind of like a 10 down to a 1. Now, in reality, we rarely put anybody in the book that's a 1 through 5, and there's sometimes a few 6s in there, kind of MLB platoon players. But it's a way for us to try to communicate kind of what the sort of best case scenario for this certain prospect is. There's a lot of kind of talk about and figuring back and forth about where that kind of ceiling should be, and that's the fun of us the fun that we have as a kind of a prospect team is trying to talk those through. We try to be really careful with the 10s that we give out. There's not ones necessarily every year, although in the past few years we have given ones to Wander Franco, Vlad Guerrero, and we'll kind of see. We feel like that's legitimate. Those guys are kind of beyond this sort of elite stage. So as we go through some of the examples here, you'll see with the player boxes specifically, you'll see these grades. So that's the first part of the grade is that number. The letter then is sort of it's what we think of as kind of the probability rating. You can kind of think of it sort of as a risk factor, kind of how confident we are that this player will reach that ceiling. Kind of goes, as you can see there, it's a letter grade, just like you'd get in school, from A down to E. And those are important, and certainly they change over time. We kind of reassess those every year in each season. It's kind of easy when toolsy guys from the draft kind of first enter MLB organizations. You can say, this guy's so athletic. I think he's a 9. But he might be a 9E or a 9D, and a lot of that's just because the D or E is because he hasn't proven himself at the pro level. And he may struggle for a year or two, and a couple years down the road, we may realize that there's lots of different holes in his games have been exposed offensively or defensively, and now he's more of a 7B, kind of a solid, kind of average player. But with a high probability of kind of reaching that. Right. So that's a little, that's just a quick kind of overview of the system. We do that with kind of, your long-term fantasy impact in mind, even though, technically the potential ratings are more on a regular baseball scale, but we try to, set those as kind of, what kind of fantasy impact these players would have. And so, so that's kind of the rating system that we use throughout our products, and it's worked quite well for us, and always provides a good place of discussion among our staff and readers for those.
Our only, I believe our only 10 this year, I know he's at 10, is the cover boy, Bobby Witt. Right. I think we gave him a 10D, which again, those 10s are really rare, but even the 9s are kind of rare too, but it's.
And I think that's fair. Like the 10D is a fair rating. Most of our 10s recently have actually been 10Cs. So like, Franco I think the 10D, Vlad, I wasn't the one in Acuna prior to that. So like, I wasn't the one that had this, but Rob shared his rationale to us because we have a discussion of this, and there are issues with Bobby Witt Jr. that I hate to call them issues, but they're real world issues with swing and miss, with whiffs, with chasing the ball, and honestly, for a guy who hit 30 home runs and stole almost I think over 25 bases. Which it looks really good on paper, split between AA and AAA. The exit velocities weren't that impressive. So like those sort of things, this guy might be a guy that might struggle coming out of the gate. This is a long play with a 10D for Bobby Witt Jr. as opposed to when we saw Acuna and when we saw Wander Franco. Like you saw those attributes right away during their major league debuts. Even with Vlad, even though it took a little longer, you saw the velocity when he got a hold of something. Why he was a 10.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that these are kind of grades that we see as they're reaching kind of sort of at their peak level. Yep. And sometimes you can get all excited about a 9C guy coming up, and it's there may be certain holes or whatever that that are a longer road for them to get there. So.
All right. And speaking of that 9C that you just alluded to, we're going to transition that and just go and have Brent just walk us through. So I mentioned at the beginning, like kind of the meat and potatoes in the middle of the book has basically these hitter boxes. And what you're seeing here is Brent will walk us through kind of the process with some of the highlights here. Basically, anyone who gets a write-up gets their own box. And then similar to kind of forecaster style, we do have a little commentary on the right side to make this easier to view. We kind of chop that off and just focus on the numbers in the box, but there is a little commentary for every prospect as well. So walk us through, Brent.
Sure.
A typical hitter box.
Yeah, this is Josh Lowe, and similar. It's a similar setup to a forecaster box, as you say, but there's a lot of information here, and these three color kind of highlights are three of them on the hitter side. We, for each player, kind of have an expected MLB debut date. In Josh Lowe's case, it already happened in 2021. You see the one at bat there. So that's what's listed 2021 for him. And the second part of it is kind of off to the right too. That future is kind of, again, once he's an established player, where does he fit? So Lowe is one who currently, when he comes up here, the 8 and 9 to the right of his name have to do with the position on the field. Center field and right field is kind of what he qualified for last year. But in the future, kind of at his peak, we think that he'll be able to stay in center field. There will be some players, you'll come across that plays center field in the minors, but it's actually, when he, fills out some and he doesn't probably have the route running ability to stick in center, with that future, we'll say starting outfielder, meaning a corner outfielder as opposed to center fielder. So that's the first part, and those are the same whether that's a batter or hitter. They have both of those elements there. The blue over to the left is the individual skills grades, which again, just is a testament to kind of all the work that the writers put in for these. But he gets a power grade, a batting average grade, a speed grade, and a defensive grade. These are all, 1 through 5 is the range of the plus marks there. So you can see that Lowe, has above average power, a 3 being average in this case, about, an average batting average, above average speed, and above average defense. Obviously, you can easily they're set up that way to easily translate kind of into the fantasy categories. The defense being there to kind of let you know, is that a strong suit of his? It can mean, a longer leash once they come up, more at bats, or is it something that may hold him back? And in Lowe's case, it's a positive. And then the overall rating up in the upper right, as you said, we have Lowe as a 9C, which is again kind of an elite level, really elite level player, but about a 50% chance of kind of getting there. And that's that's fairly positive, I would say, in that case. And again, it's always a trick of how long that takes to get there. We say this a lot, but obviously we get spoiled by the Juan Sotos and the Fernando Tatis Juniors that hit the ground running on their right from the get-go, where that's not at all the norm for that group. So anyway, so that's a hitter box, and Chris, why don't you take us through some of the characteristics of a pitcher box?
Sure. I was the writer of the Josh Lowe box.
There you go.
And we cut it off. For you. That's not good.
He's the brother of Nate. Do you guys know who he is? Nate Lowe?
Yep.
Nathaniel now.
Nathaniel now. Okay. Yes, cool.
Sure.
Cool. I especially love the fact that he stole 27 bases and also did get caught once. That was the eye-opening thing in that whole thing right there. So here we are. We've got pitcher this time, Nick Lodolo, who is a Reds prospect and went to TCU. Was drafted and made his debut in 2019 and then didn't show up, but worked at the alternate site. And honestly, when I saw him early in the year, I really thought that he was going to be in the major leagues, but didn't quite get there last year. Did get to Louisville, almost got there. So on here, we've got his the orange box there says Texas Christian. I had to kind of remember that really quickly. Throws left, age 24. I love the photo that you guys use because this really says a lot about this guy. If you notice you can even tell that he throws from a lower arm angle from that pitch right there. Beautiful photo. But we look at the fastball and we look at the blue thing. We've got fastball, slider, curveball, and changeup. Okay, so that fastball, we have it sitting 93, 96. The average fastball is around that range. So that would be a 3+ thing, but we're going to take a few things into consideration when we're looking at Nick Lodolo's fastball, considering that it's coming from a lower slot with ride. You're not used to having ride from lower slots. You're used to having ride from, over the top type thing. You can't really get that on the video. I'm sorry. But those are the type of things. So the pitch profile, his ability to command the pitch gave it that extra plus. So we're kind of, I consider 4 pluses either somewhere between a 60 grade pitch and a 70 grade pitch. And he's at that 60 grade pitch. We'll skip the slider. It's playable, but not necessarily something that we're going to really spend too much time on. It's more of a vertical breaker than a slide piece. The curveball is a sweeping curveball, and that's his best secondary pitch. And I think what's really the thing I appreciate the most of that pitch is his ability per count to really manipulate the movement of that pitch by grip. He can get at its sweep to essentially make an aggressive hitter go after it. And then the third pitch, there's the changeup. You'd traditionally see it marked as CH, but Baseball HQ goes with CU. It's 87 to 89. It has the velocity on the side. And it's a nice fading pitch with a little bit of drop, but it's an average pitch. So you see a starting arsenal that has come out of this here. 3 pitches that are average or better, 1 pitch that's workable but isn't something that you're going to necessarily use a high percentage of the time. And then on this case, we picked an 8B pitcher. So 8 means that he's going to be a solid regular in fantasy. And the B rating there means that there's a 70% probability. So the reason why we don't jump this and say that it's going to be a 9, going to be an all-star thing is I personally think, and we see Dom on this side, the strikeout potential of Lodolo, and him striking out in AA 13.9 per 9 innings. A tremendous command as well. But my thinking on this, watching him pitch, is there is some margin of error, but there's not much margin of error with his stuff. If he doesn't have a feel for the fastball or curveball in a given game, it's going to be a hard game. And we kind of saw that when he got promoted to Louisville. I mean, it was, I think, two outings, but it was one of those outings was not pretty. So that's kind of what we go into when we're talking about a pitcher. And, that rating has a lot to do with where they're going to end up as a future potential player. So we have him as a mid-rotation starter, a number 3 starter. There's a good possibility that it might be a number 4 starter. I end up going with the highest, best within the probability of outcomes. with this rating, with this future. So, a 7 guy, there could still be called a number 3 starter, but he might be a lower number 3 starter. I could use that 8 rating also on a number 2 guy, but I could also use a 9 rating on a number 2 guy. It all depends upon their different attributes that they bring to the table and whether that they're going to be a top flight number 3 guy or a lesser number 3 guy.
The other thing I really like on the boxes is how we split out every level. So you can kind of see, especially like with the year-end level, their age versus level, which I'm not in tune to this stuff as much as you guys are, but that is always like a really big factor to see, are they playing kind of 1 year ahead at their level, or did they go back to the same level, that sort of thing. So that's another kind of little thing. If you look at the year and level columns, it can be super useful with the boxes too. So.
Yeah. One other thing I didn't mention earlier on is kind of, we made the choice as we were setting it up this year to kind of to put 2020 in there, but pretty much run it blank for anybody that didn't pitch. And then note, as with actually both of these guys, I think, the ones that were at the alternate site, that says that the team, I think thought a little bit more of them to bring them there. That was a limited amount of guys they could have there. But I think it also helps us remember that, there was in this case, there was a whole year where Lodolo, did not pitch competitively because he spent it at the alternate site. And I think that just helps as you kind of look through and scan those different levels.
That's right. I did forget about space was tight at some of the alternate sites. So it does say something if they invited a prospect to him.
Yeah.
All right. So switching gears a little bit to not just the HQ 100. That kind of gets all the pub. That's our number. That's our overall top 100 fantasy list. But there's a lot of different individual lists in the MLBA as well, in terms of specific skills and as well as the overall. So something that's very useful if you're looking for specific skills out of players. Brent, if you just want to give an overview of kind of the stuff that we're looking at with not just the HQ 100, but the lists themselves.
Yeah, the HQ 100 is kind of our overall, top 100. In this case, it's a composite, as I mentioned there, of kind of 6 individual writers. We each submit our own personal kind of top 100s. We compute those out, and kind of that's what we come out with this composite list. I think it's interesting because on that, out of those 6 people, out of those 6 folks, there's ones of us that have different amounts of live games that we see. There's a few of the folks in that group that do important statistical analysis stuff. Those, some of us have contacts at different places. I think it's a good kind of way to, kind of represent these different perspectives, all again with kind of a fantasy spin, and all with like a long-term value worked into those. The other lists that we have there in the book is list by each organization, kind of a top 15. We have different top lists by position, so you can find out who the top 15, we feel the top 15 fantasy first basemen are at that point. And then you can, that runs in the back of the book. You can kind of cross-reference and find the player's box to learn more specifics about them. And then we also have some skills, kind of best power prospects, best speeds prospects, best fastball, and some other things along that line. So it's definitely it's important kind of reference point. A lot of these lists are tucked in the back of the book. One of the other really fun things is we also run the past 8 years of the HQ 100s, which every time that I go to update that every year, the one that falls off the list is always pretty entertaining.
Humbling.
To see. Yes, humbling is right. So, for instance, the this is a 2014 top 100. Includes Tyon Walker at number 4 and Miguel Sano at number 5. That great starter Archie Bradley at number 8. Gregory Polanco at number 10. So it's always a fun thing to look back and kind of be reminded of this imperfect. These lists are imperfect and change.
And that's a great thing, like what you just mentioned, because I wrote all those guys up at other sites that no longer exist. So, my slate's been clean of those guys. But one of the I know that Brent probably to get Jesus Montero off of those lists. I mean,
that's exactly
like
right.
when I first started, it was like wow, But I was there too. I mean, we were all there. These are guys that you brought up that were industry guys. That a lot of people were high on. We didn't know that Archie Bradley would never discover fastball command, and we never thought that Tajon Walker would, get injured a bunch. There's a lot of those things that go into this, and I think that looking at those lists as a list maker has made me be more conservative with guys. If that's anything, I think that our list is a more conservative list compared to other places that are reaching for to be the next great, find the next great guy that might be coming out of the Dominican or coming out of Venezuela or coming out of Virginia. It doesn't really matter where they're coming out of, but our list has some guys on it that other fantasy lists don't have. And that's because we were high on them. We saw something there. And we're still giving the guy a chance to get there because that's still there. Those skills are there. Of course, some guys will age out like Cornelius Randolph. I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there. I don't think we ever ranked him, but I know that Brent, being a Phillies fan, has his heartstrings on Randolph, or did, right? But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that we're our list is a composite list, as Brent pointed out, and none of us lobby. That's the great thing, because if we did, I would have lobbied Drew Waters off of our list this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a straight average. You send in your kind of blind lists, and the numbers come out as they come.
And then they come. Yep. So anyway,
I do remember the great catcher debate of Jesus Montero or Carlos Santana, who was the better prospect going up.
And none of them played catcher.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
All right. So let's go through a couple kind of picks for each one of you. Prospect outside the top 25 who could be in the top 5 next year. Chris, go ahead and make the case.
I picked somebody inside the top 25. Oh my God, I read that.
I know, I saw that.
That tells you what my day was.
He was our number 1 Yankee prospect ahead of Jason Dominguez.
That really tells you what my day was.
I tell you what. Wow.
You talk about yours, and I will pick somebody.
There we go.
And the interesting thing is the guy I was going to talk about, you brought up already, is Khalil Watson.
Yep.
He was number 40 on this year's list. Like you said, he was a first rounder, number 16th overall. Not a big shortstop. He's listed at 5'9", 178, but explosive bat speed. It really propels both his hit and power tool. He's a rare kind of high schooler that both swings super hard and makes good contact. He's just one of these quick twitch athletes. A big stolen base threat, and he's several years away, could end up in center field, but it's the type of kind of skill set that could end up with a 30-30 kind of upside, and top 5 is sort of a lofty goal, just a year plus after he was drafted. But again, it's just the type of tools that we look for. And, as we talk about our ratings, I mean, he was rated as a 9D. I mean, that's the type of player that we would say, if you really just want to draft for upside, I know there's people that do this with our ratings, just go through and look for the 8s and especially the 9s, because those are the guys that we say, even if they're far away, and maybe more risky, if they hit, they're going to be impact fantasy players. So anyway, Khalil Watson was my pick outside the 25. You could end up who could make a big jump this year with some production as he hits full season ball.
Well, I've decided to change my pick from a guy that's outside of the top 25 and not a guy that should be in our top 10. But Brayan Rocchio, the Guardian shortstop, we ranked him in the 40s. And he's a guy that throughout, so we make these lists in December. We don't release them until now. So we released it late January, but you sleep on things, you read things, you talk to more people, and you're kind of like, oh, this guy I should have probably had higher. Just kind of going through it. Not a guy that I was incredibly impressed with when I saw him in 2019, but he's a guy when you're watching video. I love that right there. Just cross it out like it never. Well, it still happened, but it's still there. We
got to keep it on the record. So
it's just a reminder.
Just a reminder that Chris messed up tonight. But Rocchio's a shorter stature shortstop prospect, and I think we actually pumped him up to the number 1 Indians prospect this year over George Valera. What I really like about him is his tremendous bat control. Dude can spray the ball around and really gets to the gaps, slashes to the gaps, which is something that, I like to see. The power is kind of a below average power, but the way he impacts the ball and the angles he's able to get, he can play that raw below average to average because the hit tool is just so good. That's one thing. If there's guys that we tend to miss on, are always those guys with the nice hit tool that don't really showcase power until they're in the big leagues. That's one miss that we usually do. I really like this guy because he's also a heady player with all of this talent. He's a speedy guy as well. Handles shortstop very well. And again, I think that this guy can get up to 20 home runs. And with this package of tools, being able to steal, this guy's going to sneak into the top 5 this year, even though he's only 5'10" listed, but I'm sure he's shorter than that.
All right, guys who were left off, since there are always going to be a few, given that we're averaging 6. Chris, we'll throw this back to you. Assuming this guy actually was not on the HQ 100.
He wasn't. He was on my list, but I don't think he was on anybody else's. So
how high did you have him?
I had him just inside the 100.
Okay.
And the reasons for that is there were a little bit of concerns with his he chased a bunch in the Arizona Complex League. It's James Triantos, shortstop from a high school 2nd-round pick. I already kind of talked a little bit about him. I didn't really go into full detail. But was an over-the-slot guy that some of the better organizations in baseball, I think, were hot on him. And the Cubs were, the opportunists and got him in the 2nd round and paid a little extra. One of the things that he showed in his high school days was a mature, very patient approach. And I think that the pitching, the crazy thing at the complex, I was talking to a complex scout about this a few months ago. There were so many older pitchers there because of the backlog of pitching, because we took away minor league teams. Well, I don't know if we covered that. There was also a bunch of minor league teams that got taken away. A few short season levels like the Appalachian League, like the Northwest, even though that's kind of turned into a league in its own. The Pioneer League went away. The New York Penn League went away. So all of these pitchers who might have been pitching there ended up in the Arizona Arizona League. So Triantos actually was facing a lot of breaking balls and was making a lot of contact against pitches that not necessarily would have seen prior, and was making good contact. So like I'm not totally concerned since there is against the higher level competition, even though it was prep higher level competition, that he showed this patience. I'm not as fearful as maybe other evaluators were when they were ranking him. But like, this is a kid that people I like really like him, and all the video I've seen and all the reports I've been able to get, I just believe this guy might be a top 50 guy after this season, playing in low A for Charleston. Or not Charleston, Myrtle Beach. I'm sorry.
Interesting. Yeah. And especially because, like, I don't know, at least you're more casual dynasty players. You look at just the top 100 list. If someone's not on that list, kind of like totally out of sight, out of mind. So it's interesting that top 50 comment if things break right.
Yeah.
Brent, go ahead.
Yeah, the guy I had is definitely was not on the HQ 100 this year and will likely not be on it next year because he may well debut in the majors this year. And that's Kyle Stowers, from an outfielder in the Orioles organization. He's a kind of a long, lean, strong, strapping kid. He's one of these guys that we talked about, was from the 2019 draft. So he missed kind of all of 2000. And I think that may have, he's a college player, and I think that may have, contributed to him kind of sort of being under the radar a bit. But he rose through 3 levels from high A up to triple A this past season, and hit a combined 278, 383, slugged 514 with 27 home runs. He's a right fielder with power, with kind of near elite batted ball metrics in the minors. He does swing and miss some. Although he also posted kind of double-digit walk rates there. You got a comment for me?
Yeah, I mean, we had a contact rate of him when he got to AAA, and I know it was only 81 bats of a 60. Like, contact's an issue with him. But like as you're saying, like, I mean, this guy hits the ball really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think he won't steal many bases for you, that kind of thing. But I think in a way, it's sort of a perfect right fielder swing for Camden Yards. And I think, he's just someone that's under the radar. I think he could debut sometime this summer. Like you said, he had a short stint in AAA, so he'll probably head there to start. And I think he's got a chance to kind of surprise. And one of these guys that if he had, for instance, kind of a full season in 2020, he probably would have baked his time a little bit. I think he could well be sort of a top 100 prospect at this point. But that's one of my favorite guys that got left off the HQ 100.
So, like, what's really funny, this is how Brent and I think. Like, I literally was going to put Kyle Stowers when I first saw this question, and then I was the last to this spreadsheet, and he beat me there. I after speaking to people in the Orioles organization who aren't necessarily gonna, they're very honest about their players. The guy that I talked to, like, he thinks that the issues with the swing and miss are stuff that they can work out. So I think the swing and miss will always be a part of the game, but it won't be at the extent. It would be some swing and miss as opposed to a lot of swing and miss that we kind of saw this year.
And it's interesting, Brent's comment on how he might not be on the list next year because he'll be in the majors. We'll see how that swing and miss translates up to the next level. It'll be interesting. Speaking of the next level, and if anyone has any quick questions for Brent and Chris, this is our final slide before Q&A, so get them in, and we'll get to those. But wanted to talk about 2022 impact prospects, pitcher and hitter for each of you. So Chris, we'll start with older brother. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of talked about Young a little prior when we were talking about Jace. I guess I have a thing for these young brothers right now. They're probably not into me, so it's okay. But Josh made a transformation from when we saw him in 2019 to when we saw him again in 2021. This is a guy that I wasn't necessarily high on when they drafted him because he could not hit the ball to the pull field. And being a third baseman, while average is great and all, what carries you into a lineup, which is kind of silly sometimes. And I mean, you can find power almost at any position these days, but power unfortunately carries you at third base. So a guy like Young wasn't as attractive when you can't hit the ball to the pull side. So he made tremendous strides getting his lower half more involved in things. And what I mean by that is his lower half was kind of cutting him off. But usually we use something like cutting off when we're talking about a guy that's cutting himself off to the pull side. He wasn't enabling himself to get his body there. So when he actually did pull something, he usually pulled it foul. There's other hitters that we see this in. Austin Martin, I almost dropped the name. I'm not allowed to drop because he's still a draftable guy. But Austin Martin, the Twins prospect, is a guy that gets tremendous angles to the opposite field and kind of gets you, very excited about, but cannot hit it to the pull side. And, Brent had seen him, and that was where Josh came from. And the Rangers and Josh did tremendous work to open up that power to the pull side, which is now we're talking about a guy who might hit 25 home runs while also not losing that approach going the other way. I in another podcast I kind of talked, it was this I'm not going to say a similar player because I think the guy, if I'm going to talk about, would have been a Hall of Famer if he wasn't injured, but David Wright had that, right center field swing. And was able to power up to basically 10 to 15 home runs to the pull side, 10 to 15 home runs to the opposite field, and then you're talking about a guy that was closing in on 30 home runs. Like I don't think he has that kind of power, but like this is a guy that's going to be a high average guy. He's going to get on base, and I fully believe that like this is the third baseman of the future for the Rangers, and we're going to see him start at some point. We don't know what the manipulation will be after this silly lockout, is settled. But he could be up right away. He could be up in June, May, who knows? But he's ready.
There's not much, looking at our HQ depth chart, there's not much competition at third base, we'll say, currently on the roster.
Charlie Culverson, who went to nearby Calhoun High School, is, I think, under contract still. So I'd hate it because my wife is a Charlie Culverson fan, but she graduated from Calhoun. But Josh Young is a lot better baseball player than Mr. Culverson.
Yeah. All right, Shane Boz.
Okay, I figured you were going to go with Brant. So Shane Boz is a guy that I can talk for Ryan and Brent. We got to see him in Arizona in 2019. Mm-hmm. And Nick Pollock from Pitcher List. I think we all participated in PitchCon this year. One of my favorite things about the whole conference was how Nick just sat up straight when Shane Boz started warming up. It was a total he saw all these minor league pitchers, and then he saw this guy that exuded a major league starter. And it was funny too because I had just gotten done talking to a scout that was all I see him as a reliever. But Boz went from a guy who couldn't throw strikes consistently to a guy with plus command on his fastball. It was the pandemic happened, and then this guy came out with throwing strikes 70% of the time, almost 70% of the time, crazy. He's mostly a 2-pitch mix now, which would scare us for a starting pitcher back in the day, but not so much today. The slider's a plus pitch, especially with a team like the Rays. They're going to, going to get the most out of that package. The one thing that's a little bit of concern is the changeup. We'd like to see that come along. And by the way, our Pirates fans here, this guy is the last part of the Chris Archer deal. So we're not going to have any more jokes after this. When Shane Baz is not a rookie anymore, we're not going to make fun of you for that deal. We'll probably make fun of you for something else. Although by the way, I like the Pirates organization right now. I think that their farm system is up and coming. But man, that's hard.
Yeah. It's almost over, though. That trade, at least. All right, cool. Brent, what do we got?
Yeah, for the hitter, and again, this is guys that are here that we think are going to impact this year, not just long term. I picked C.J. Abrams. He was on the fast track before a broken leg kind of took him out of the season this year. He's a first rounder from 2019. Infielder, has a combination of kind of bat speed, pitch recognition, and enough power, that kind of all coalesces into an outstanding hit tool. His main fantasy asset, though, is his speed. He has tons of stolen bases. He had 14 and just 142 at bats in rookie ball in 2019. And then this year he had 162 at bats before he got injured and had another 13 steals at AA. So it's it's a really big combination, but his legs are a big part of it. For 2022, he's more likely kind of a mid-season call-up, and that's kind of parsing out, getting his feet wet, going back to probably AA, maybe AAA, putting in a good half season there. But the difference that he can make in a short time in a stolen base category is makes him kind of one to watch, I think, for this season. I know for me, when we're trying to come up with in November or December kind of a fantasy impact prospect for the next year, it's always this kind of balance between is this player skilled enough to kind of make a difference when he gets there, and then is he going to get there in this next year? These are, you do have pop-up guys you don't expect, way from way back, Jose Fernandez going from, A ball right to the majors and having that impact, or someone like Soto, rising through a couple levels and being in the majors right away. But, proximity to the major leagues is part of it. One of the kind of exceptions I make in thinking about that is like with speed guys, given how much stolen bases are going down, and that's an important category. All that to say, I think Abrams is one to keep an eye on in that respect. And I think it's also important to realize, yes, he plays shortstop. There's talk of him being athletic enough to play. I think he's played a little bit of center. He's played a little second. You see shortstop San Diego and you say, well, Tatis is there, but who has a shoulder that's it should be a concern for everyone at this point. It could well be mid-season, that gives Tatis trouble. And depending how Abrams is developing, they may have just a natural fit for that. So I just think that's something to consider, especially in our early drafts at this point. On the pitching side, I went with Ronda Contreras, who actually, for Pirates fans, this is some good news because it's an actual trade that seems like it's going to possibly work out. He came over in the Jameson Taillon deal from the Yankees last off season, and with him, he had been kind of a mediocre kind of number 3, number 4 starter, kind of was on his track. I remember seeing him in low A ball several years ago. There were some nice secondaries, but but nothing really stood out. Well, he showed up in 2021 with a big velocity jump. He had been in the low 90s. Now he was bringing the mid 90s. His his curveball and changeup also both improved. And the K's just kind of shot through the roof. He had a strikeout percentage of 21% in 2019 in that year in low A. In 2021, it jumped up to 35%. And impressively, it kind of, had maintained its control too. I got a chance to see him early in the year in May. And it was really impressive. He's not big. There'll be some talk whether he'll be able to hold up over the whole season. He did have a forearm injury that took him out for part of last year. But there's some deception there in his delivery, and in his lone kind of MLB start right at the end of the year in September. He threw 3 innings for the Pirates. He showed some pretty remarkable poise in his 3 innings. Didn't look rattled. Was making his pitches. I think had 4 strikeouts through those 3 innings. Anyway, Contreras, I think, is someone that even if they continue to manipulate his service time, he'll be he's kind of ready for the rotation, and I think the Pirates have no reason not to run him out there, and I think he has a good chance, not a kind of a top of the rotation guy, but a really solid number 3, possibly a number 2 in some of these years, and I think there's a lot of good things there which is a good success story for Pittsburgh after being on the other side of some of these trades in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you were kind of alluding to at the end there, Brent, a lot of the, at least for impact for this year, sometimes is out of the player's control. It's, how willing is the organization to call them up?
Yeah.
Do they have spots? And yeah, definitely some spots available in Pittsburgh's rotation. So
yeah.
Good stuff there, guys. I know we're a little bit over on time, but that's all good. We do have a question, and if anyone wants to get some final questions, and we got a question for Chris, who had the Texas organization, about Cole Winn. And, if you just want to kind of expand upon what you saw in the box and how you wrote up Winn for Texas.
So, kind of start out with, Rangers were a brand new organization for me this year. I actually took them because I was hoping to see some of their players, but every time I went to go see one of their players, either we had rainouts or COVID issues. So I didn't really get a chance to see any of them, but watched a lot of video. And I watched a lot of video on Cole Winn. I think what impressed me with him was firstly was the performance at the Futures game. He was kind of, there was some electricity around him, even though it was maybe a little juice for that appearance. What was mentioned in the question was talking about tunneling. Tunneling is something that we really have concentrated more on in recent years. I think it's always existed, but I think now with technology being as it is, you're able to see more how pitches come out of the hand as compared to, years past. And they can measure that with, the powerful cameras that they have importing all this data back in. Again, this guy's a very athletic delivery. It's actually kind of like a long arm delivery, and that's kind of a little bit concerning there with his command. But from the 2 games that I watched, I tried to watch a game early on and the game late, and of course the Futures game, I saw a guy that, despite being a little bit long in that arm circle, always hit his spot. That ball came out exactly where it was supposed to, and I particularly liked how his curveball came out of the slot that he used. And, it was a good depth. So it was very comparable to the fastball when it got released. But then, of course, curveball has different action and went its different way. His 4-seamer, rode, and this one dropped. He also throws a changeup with the good fading action, and he also has a slider that's has kind of become a formidable weapon. I've been surprised not to see him as high on some of the ratings as our ratings. I don't know. Maybe they're a little bit scared of the arm angle and stuff, but you look at a guy and yes, there's a chance for injury. There is some torque on that arm, some of that kind of stuff. And the Rangers have not had the best health history with pitchers. Let's call it as it is. I guess there might be some concern here, but I think he's, for me, he's their number 2 pitcher after recently drafted Vanderbilt pitcher Jack Leiter. He's their number 2 pitcher, and they actually have a lot of really good pitchers in their organization right now. This is the best pitcher crop that they've ever had since I've been doing this for 12, 13 years. It's a very exciting group, top on down. I can't think of the dude's name. I'm blanking.
I'm interested in
late.
Spencer Howard, coming over from Philly, how that changes.
I wonder that too, and I know that Brent, Brent spent a lot of time with Spencer Howard, given that's his coverage. But the Phillies haven't really developed any pitchers in a long time, and this actually came from a conversation I had with the scout the other night. And so it's very curious to see where Spencer Howard ends up, and if the Rangers can get out of it. I've talked to other people that are kind of like, I don't know, they're better scouts, do a better job scouting. But looking at Wynn's delivery from 2019 to 2021, it's obvious that somebody did something. Who knows if it was a pitching factory or something like that, a private place, or if it was the Rangers. But seemingly something changed, and you got to hope that the Rangers were involved in that, because it is a cleaner mechanics and cleaner operation than it was prior.
Very good. Well, appreciate it, guys. That's the question we got, but thanks for the time. I'm excited to once my copy does show up to finally dig into that paper and ink version. But yeah, thanks to Brent, Chris, and the folks who hung around with us tonight. And this will be archived on our YouTube channel as well. So check that out on our site. And happy prospecting this year. Any final thoughts, Brent, Chris, before we head out?
No, just always a good time to. It's nice to have the paper book back, of course, and encourage those that aren't familiar to go check it out. And appreciate the questions and the interest in the minor league prospects. I think it's always interesting to take what we kind of see on the field and kind of put it into a package for people that hopefully helps them get a leg up in their leagues.
I'd just like to give a shout out to First Pitch Florida, which is coming up soon. Brent and Ray and Ron have been, designing a program, and that's March 3rd through 5th, right? Yep,
March 3rd through 5th in St. Petersburg. And again, you can find that information at the homepage of the website. We'll be announcing more speakers and some of the sessions and such in the coming days. It's coming up quick, and that will be taking place whether there's spring training baseball there or not.
Yeah, which is still undetermined, but that's another podcast.
Yes, exactly. We almost got through the whole thing without mentioning that.
I'm hoping not to be invited to that podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of podcasts, we are looking forward to your pod returning in March. So keep an eye out for that, for the Eyes Have It podcast season 2. All right, guys. Thanks again, and we'll catch you soon. Have a good night.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Peace out.